from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Cindy, second by Sydney, all in favor.
This is fine.
Application to use a village property, Doubleday Field, Doubleday parking lot by Josh Robert for a bar mitzvah food truck on June 3rd from 2023, from 2 p.m. until 7 p.m. And he's completed the Doubleday Field rental use agreement and has paid the $1,000 use fee. Ready? A motion?
It hardly seems like that we need to do anything with this if he's already renting the field. But he wants.
Right, but he's outside with the food truck, so we discussed this last time. The food truck is, yeah. Yeah,
I interpreted this that he was renting the parking lot too.
well, that area by, shall I say, the Fowler exhibit.
Yeah.
Which is not part of our field rental.
Okay.
So is there a motion?
I'll move with that.
That would say,
By Joe, second by Richard.
I still have a question.
Okay,
Exactly what is he renting?
the field.
The field. Okay, fine.
And then he's also going to have a food truck.
Oh, okay, fine.
Adjacent to
Okay,
the
okay.
field. Yeah.
Can we take food trucks onto those pavers without damaging them?
Damn it, sure.
I realize that, we wouldn't want to.
Was it gonna be right on the pavers or was it gonna be just adjacent?
What did he say?
I thought it was. He wasn't. Not that it would make a difference. This,
He would like, it probably won't be a truck, the last correspondence appears to be that it's gonna be that, Nella's, wood-fired pizza. And they sort of set up by, for one of our concert series, I don't know, if you were down, but in the Lakefront Park.
so on the application that has the attachment that has the email, there's a shaded area that says. You
Yeah.
use the pizza truck, the small area between the grandstand and the first base.
That's what I'm reading, the Nella's wood-fired pizza, and I'm just saying that they have like a separate thing they set up. Yeah,
They do use they attach the wood fire
to the tank, to their truck,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
right?
So, and I think that they typically like to keep it attached, it's harder, because I know that.
So do we have an issue with them backing the trailer oven up onto that? I'm not sure we do, but.
I don't,
I don't, as long as they're complicated, but
yeah,
I think if the trailer's on it, it's fine, if the vehicle is on it, then.
yeah.
Again, I'm not clear what this
So the
says.
motion was made and seconded. All in favor? And then we have from Cassandra Harrington of Destination Marketing. They want to use our copyrighted Doubleday Field Sandlot Kid imagery for the front of their Cooperstown, Otsego County Inspiration Guide. And they had reached out, they knew that the chamber had done it before. So you will see our trademark license agreement here. And basically, if it's approved by the board, I would initial that second paragraph in 3. If initialed here by the licensor, it is agreed that the requested use provides a benefit to the licensor. Such benefit may involve the advertising or promoting by the licensee of Village of Cooperstown facilities. My only comments were, and I went back, she emailed this to me, so I looked at the original and then this nice copy that Jenna sent. And in the original, that R is that small on there. I think we need to say that the R, so if you look on the left side, the Sandlot Kid at Doubleday Field, and that is supposed to be sort of the larger R in a circle copyright. I don't even think that's really showing there. Would you concur?
Yeah,
Yeah, you can't really tell if that's an R.
No, so I will make that note on there, and when I sign this tomorrow, we'll put that on there, Jen. And I'm also, we've never issued a license in perpetuity, which is clause number 6 on the back side. Usually, I mean, this will probably be printed this year and something else will be printed next year. And in order to see it every year, we're not charging a fee, we should see it. And so I think that this should be changed in 6. This license shall be in effect until December 31st, 2023. So we're good with that change as well. Okay. And if that is it.
I have a question. I find this statement to be really vague about the benefit. It is agreed that the requested use provides a benefit to the licensor and therefore we will not charge.
This was something that was discussed, this was a trademark license agreement, which basically has been tweaked a little bit. It has been the form used by the village since the property was copyrighted. The landmark was copyrighted in 2010. And that was one complaint we kept getting, because I don't know if you've noticed, destination marketing, chamber, a lot of organizations used it, but for advertising the village. It's not like they're selling a product and getting revenue from it. They're promoting our community for tourism. So the board voted a while ago to add that second paragraph under 3 to include this sort of thing. So we're not trying to extract a fee from an organization promoting the village.
And this falls into that.
This
Bid,
would,
you
and
think?
by my estimation, totally falls into.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if there, can I have a motion that have the mayor sign it with the changes we've noted? The R needs to be more legible. The license is in effect till December 31st, 2023.
So
By Hannes.
I'll second it. I just have one question after seconding it. These are 2 protected images that we have, right? The Sandlot Kid and
The whole, this is fascinating because at one point people thought it was just we licensed Doubleday Field. This, I don't know if you ever knew Chuck Knoll, who was a copyright attorney, patent attorney, and he in 2010 worked with the village, and this was adopted. Actually, the fee was established in 2010, and we've never increased it, $1,000. If it weren't for advertising to benefit.
my point is this, I'm looking at this and I see 2 separately independently protected images. Am I
Yeah,
wrong
me
about
too.
that?
It's all part of it, though. It
But I
is.
think we should have, for the purpose of this copyright registration of this, we should have the R applied. We don't have a single image like this with them combined that we registered.
I see what you said. You want to have Sandlot Kid red R and at Doubleday Field R.
Yes, if that's
Okay,
what.
I like that idea.
Well, it is, the whole, it's not just Sandlot and Doubleday our 1939 grandstand. It is the entire field and complex and wording. And this was, when we first came up with this for the chamber, I think, to use, I still communicate, as does the village attorney, with Chuck Knoll. And he said he recommended this, the Sandlot Kid at Doubleday Field, and we caught both of them with an R after it. Are people comfortable with that?
I guess I don't pretend to be,
I don't think.
but I just noticed that we have independent use of that Doubleday grandstand that we've registered and we lease out independent of the Sandlot Kid. So whatever protects us is fine. I just wanted to note that this is a combination of the 2 protected images that we have.
Yeah, the whole complex it's a hallmark that as Chuck explained, it, everything. Whether you take a picture of just the field or the 39 grandstand from the field, it's all protected. So I think I had a motion and I had a second, all in favor.
Right.
Thank you. Moving on. Jenna had to the zoning official report. Jenna had emailed the minutes for our ZBA, HPAR and planning. And of course, all those meetings were streamed and are now on our YouTube channel. Were there any questions or comments about the zoning report?
It's interesting that people who previously had short-term rentals seem to, in increasing numbers, be moving toward other uses of their property.
Yeah, which is what,
Yeah, that was the intention.
yeah. Yeah. All right. Is there a motion to accept the ZEO report?
So moved.
By Cindy, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
We're at Public Safety Committee, Police Committee.
Public Safety Committee, several things came up. One, there's the review of calls for the previous month. Two, we talked about, talked about the passport system, which is for the parking, and the app is not working. Our new officer's going to training. And I'll come back to the key point. I talked to Harold Southworth, who's director of security for Bassett, about their use of cameras throughout their property and what their feeling about it was. And Chief asked if there was any discussion on him getting a raise. And Joe said, I thought I discussed it with you, Joe. I apologize if I didn't. But it's been a while, and under his rules for his retirement, that the cap, there's no cap currently in what his salary can be, and no waiver is needed by the state, for the state.
Oh, thank you. You brought that up. I heard about it at finance. You had left by then. We are going to be approving, we're looking at all our staff salaries. And Streets had asked previously, it's really a matter of gathering data. What are neighboring communities, their unions, so what is the union contract, et cetera. So there will be a recommendation on some staff salaries, and then the finance can begin gathering information for that.
What can I tell the chief when he asks, when are we moving on?
When the finance committee has, we have nothing other than a statement. We don't have, comparables, et cetera.
All right, so we're gonna be looking into comparables.
It would seem, because I agree, need to look at a number of salaries. Wouldn't that likely be part of the budgeting process for the next?
It could be, but there may be a motion differently tonight.
Okay, so I'm gonna be surprised. Okay, great. The fire committee, I sent everybody notes today. I sent everybody the summary report of fire calls last year. And I sent everybody, or you sent everybody, and it's in the pocket, a letter from Senator Schumer's office. And asking, announcing applications for, now I can't remember what the word was, firefighters grant, aid to firefighters grant. I discussed it with Cindy over the weekend, and we've come to the conclusion that there's going to have to be a lot of stuff done very quickly, and the preliminary stuff has not been done yet. So, any comments or questions?
What is the lot that has to be done? It's kind of to draft up the initial version of an application. Or the forms.
Yes.
Just do.
So this is to February 10th.
We just
Just got about, and the letter's dated the 18th, just so it's, they're not even trying to backdate it.
Yeah, no, I mean, literally this application is.
It's dated the 10th. 18th, yeah.
So based on the requirements for this, which include being in the SAM program, being able to access the grant portal, the village would need to be the applicant. Because the fire department doesn't have that yet. And after speaking with the village attorney today, it would probably be difficult for them to get that because it appears that our fire department is unincorporated, which is typical of fire departments, but it makes it hard to set up an account for themselves. We would need first and foremost to check with people responsible for this and make sure the village can apply, because pulling together an application of this sort in 2 weeks is a monumental task in and of itself. And if it's going to get thrown out on a technicality, it would just be a waste of everyone's time. My concerns in looking at it are about the budget. So this grant seems to be for a municipality of our size capped at $1 million. We know that $1 million is not enough to get an aerial letter. And I guess we should make it clear what we're talking about is a grant for an aerial letter. So there would be a significant chunk between $750,000 and $1 million that we would have to come up with. And that is certainly possible. But being able to write a strong application in 2 weeks saying how we're going to match this is difficult. We also know that the fire department has formed a committee to think about an aerial ladder, what particular things they need and are important, but that has not yet, they haven't yet come to a firm conclusion. They have lots of information. So I guess the first call, as Martin and I discussed earlier, is to find out if the village can be the applicant. And then we know whether we move forward or not, but regardless, I would say that we need to approve the possibility of applying for this at this meeting. So that if all the pieces come together, we can do it.
I have a question. Is this a grant that comes about, I mean, every year, or is it sort of not, it's not guaranteed to?
Yeah, that's one of my huge questions. It's not guaranteed that it would come next year. We know that the federal government is going through all sorts of manipulations when it comes to budgets currently. This is money that is in the 2022 budget. So it's good money this year, whether it will be there next year, which would be more ideal for us.
You're right, that's
Okay.
Yeah, and they would be more prepared,
Yes.
you know, because the maximum, if it's $1 million, we'd have to have all, you can't really put in an application and say, we'll come up with the rest. You have to be able to say how or where those funds are coming from.
So yes, I'm ambivalent about it. I think Rich is ambivalent about it. I mean,
Well, I cannot do this. I do not have the experience or background to do this. At least not in 2, and I'm not going to gain that in the next 2 weeks. So I really, you know.
Well, did you want, in case miraculously things fell in place?
Yeah,
Cindy?
I think in case miraculously things fall into place, we should make a motion to apply for the firefighters, assistance to firefighters grant AFG program.
There's the motion
Second.
by Cindy,
Second.
second by Richard, all in favor?
Aye.
And did we kind of skip over the draft policy?
We did.
Okay, so let's make sure we review that.
So just by way of introduction. This is just a draft at this point. It's at the point where it is looking for input from the board before we consider setting a public hearing on it. Our committee is not in agreement on one particular part of this policy, and that is on page 2. You'll see on page 2, letter B, procedure, camera placement. There are 2 ways to approach this. One is to have a general policy that includes what is number 5 and lays out the rules for establishing where cameras can go. That I know is Joe's strong preference, and he'll be able to speak more to that approach. The other approach is what you see here, because it's easier to cross out than it is to add on. And that is the police department, particularly Chief Cavallari, feels that they have identified points that they think, based on their experience, make sense. And if this is going to go to public hearing, they would like those to be in the policy so that people have a sense of what they're talking about and aren't. For instance, Jesse Ravage's correspondence about various intersections, that's come up from a number of people. So this provides some clarity in terms of the intentionality of the police department. But as I said, our committee is not.
And I really like having it stipulated where they are, because I think that's gonna be the first question in a public hearing, but where? Why isn't that stated?
You want to go, Richard?
Well, we've had another car-on pedestrian accident at Susquehanna and Beaver. And this is, if I remember correctly, this is the third accident in 7 years involving 4 individuals. Or four hits, one person has been hit twice. I think it's a reasonable place. I watch it. People go gliding through that intersection. I would like to have it monitored. And frankly, I would like us to be able to write tickets for people who go through that intersection without stopping. I know that's taking this to a different level, but you just.
Let's make sure we are on the same page,
Yeah.
because the traffic reports were shared with everyone, and hopefully you read them.
Right,
And there were witnesses that in the most recent accident.
right.
The driver did come to a complete dead stop before the crosswalk. It was a turn, and it's interesting because I happened to have gone through that very intersection about 10 minutes before that. And I hit that intersection. I don't know if there was just no moon or overcast. Well, I said, this is so friggin' dark. And we have actually been approached by individuals in the community about additional streetlights. And remember, we don't own them. We have to go to NYSEG, say, could you please attach another light to this pole? And we've also investigated the lumens. The lumens at that corner were insufficient. They were terribly insufficient. And so we have already filed probably about 8 more lights and additional lumens on certain ones within the village. That's all been filed with NYSEG. So let's try the light level first, and it will increase by almost 5 times.
All right, I can go for that.
So what I would bring up is, for that intersection, I think a camera was never, like, trying to track down the individuals or understand what happened was never the problem. It was really the visibility and perhaps people going through a stop sign. I am in favor of having the spaces sort of listed out in this policy. And I'm also, I'm in favor of having cameras, especially on Main Street. I think it would be helpful for, if there were situations that required looking back onto that footage, but I'm not in favor of active monitoring of cameras in order to cite tickets. I think that takes it a step totally further, and that becomes sort of like.
I just find that drivers around here and much of the citizenry looks at many of our laws and says, yeah, they put it on the books, but they never enforce it. Martin, you're laughing, but you know it's true.
That's probably true of laws at every level.
Yeah, I know.
And Sydney, to reflect on what you said, the big change between this version and what we looked at previously concerns monitoring.
Right.
So this is an unmonitored system, with the exception of special events.
Yeah.
Or a few types of very extreme cases.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's recording footage that could be referred to after the fact.
Right, exactly. So rather than active monitoring, it's basically a referential tool.
Can you tell me, then, I read number 3, top of page 3. And it says, the chief of police or the officer in charge shall have the authority to permit monitoring.
In the case of a missing child or,
I'm missing it.
So where are they monitoring? So are we having some screens because no one's looking at them? I'm a little confused about the system.
we need to work with, well, we need to make sure that this is what people want before we work with the manufacturer to ensure that the computer screen, for instance, could be easily hooked up to this if it were needed. But the intention is no screens.
Yeah, I think, yeah, somehow that needs, because I read that and I thought, wait a minute, I thought the idea was not to have active monitoring.
Yeah, I mean.
And then suddenly, the board could say, that's not something we're in favor of, public has spoken against it. And then suddenly we could be overridden.
Well, I think, we would not be overridden if this policy were accepted as it's written. The idea would be there's an emergency.
Right,
And
But
so
that's
somebody-
stated in number
Yes.
we have it elsewhere. I mean,
so it would be as per the one.
Yeah, something like that. It just needs to be stipulated.
so if I'd just like to explain my role in this. After the policy was proposed, board formed a committee with Cindy, Richard, and I on it, and me on it, and when I read the first draft of the policy, I found it problematic because it was, a start, and it was grabbing elements from different jurisdictions and pasting them together and seeing what it would emerge. My first contribution to this effort was to try to write it, organize it, get the purposes separate from the policy, separate from the implementation, get some definitions that would be coherent and consistent and make this easier to work with. And then we found the standards for, my proposed standards for deploying cameras in the first place and having it be the product of an analysis and a data-driven analysis. So I did all this, as everybody knows, with deep skepticism, if not opposition, to the concept. But if we were to make an informed decision, I want to contribute to a document that was at least clear and expressive and everything that I thought people were talking about. So we are close to having that. There may be other things we need to capture. But my position remains that we don't have the data to justify this. And I really don't support that this kind of undertaking without a comprehensive and data-driven analysis. So for that reason, I especially object to what Cindy was pointing out, the designation of 4 spots for cameras before we have even done the first bit of due diligence pursuant to the policy that we're writing to decide whether it's called for. Whether there's any metric, any data that would support that other than anecdotal. And
But I guess, sorry, go ahead. I want to ask you a question.
We'll go ahead.
Well, the problem is, if you wait until there's an episode, then the question is, why couldn't you have anticipated this based on general principles that have happened elsewhere? Do we have to absolutely have it documented that this specific thing happened in this specific village? Or is it enough to say, well, Saratoga has used it for these purposes and they found that it helps for this?
Understood. So the what about response is not persuasive to me because we compile our own statistics.
What?
We compile our own statistics. We are trying to meet a public safety interest. And that's public safety interest experientially has not occurred in any way that strikes me as worth the expense. And the cultural change that putting cameras in represents. So if I were to one thing I could consider doing. And it's not about me, but just logically approaching this, if we adopted this policy. This policy would then be day one. And then we would do our longitudinal data gathering that's provided for in this policy. And when that data is produced in an organized and disciplined and consistent fashion, we can make a decision. What's the support? What's the data that justifies these cameras in these places? What you brought up is a very different concern. And what Sydney is opposed to is this speed, red light camera business, which gets you into a whole new universe of surveillance and overseeing and money making.
Okay, I'll back off on that one, but I want an acknowledgement that until you have a problem, you don't have the data. I mean, Sandy Hook Elementary, where was the data to have any security in that place? Where was the data to put security in a building?
If we want to discuss that issue, and I'll do it very, very briefly. We had data from school shootings all over the place. We refused to take meaningful action and stop people from having guns in the first place, not having rapid response and fortified buildings. That is not the route I'm on. And I think the logic for that is inapposite entirely, because we did have the data and the American people won't act on it. This is different. Where we don't have the data, we have a proposal for something, and I don't think it's justified. But if we want to think about it in an organized fashion, I've tried to contribute to a policy that will help us do that in a disciplined, logical fashion, that the public will be fully open to the public and reviewable along the way. And
All right, and I'll.
Okay, but we have discussed this, and at this point, we're not going to be adopting the policy tonight. And I recognize we put this committee together because we realized there were divergent opinions. And I bless Cindy every time she sat down with you all to work on this. So God bless you, Cindy. So we do need to tweak at least 3 on page 3.
My Roman numerals are off, they need to be correct.
Correct. There's a typo on page 2D. The Board of Trustees is missing an S. And there's a typo on page 4, 2. There's an extra A there at the end of that first one from A cameras.
Where are we?
Page 4, number 2, harassment and intimidation is a violation of this policy to use the archived images from A cameras, which I don't know what you want, A camera or cameras, or
I would give it singular.
we have a definition here.
singular A camera. Okay, so we're getting rid of the S. Okay, we, as you know, at the end of this meeting, we're gonna have to be setting up some workshops to begin our budget prep so that we have a tentative budget in place by March 20th. So we will have the opportunity in the next few weeks to look at this again and hopefully make a decision on whether to set a public hearing or anything on it then. We will now move on. And a motion to accept the Public Safety Committee reports. Moved by Sydney, second by Anna, all in favor?
Okay.
Thank you. And I should point out that in that additional agenda, Rich had the fire committee report, which is included. It's now 10 after 7, so we will go back to, and I will open the public hearing to increase the rate of paid parking to $2.50 per hour payable in 1/2 hour increments. Increase all-day parking at Doubleday Field parking lot to $15 per day and change the dates of the paid parking season to begin on May 1st. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on any of that? Isn't this wonderful? Do you remember our early paid parking meetings? They were riotous. So, all right, well, Do you want to, I can leave this open, but no one has obviously come, so, what is your feeling? Would you like to discuss it at all? I'll let you discuss it before I close the public hearing, just in case someone comes in.
Yeah, I have a couple of things I wanted to raise about it. In one of the, let's see. There is a provision for annual permits that states that the annual permit can be can be used in 2-hour increments. Where did the let's see if I can find it in the packet.
The first bullet point on the back page.
Mhm. So you're looking at it starts permit parking, a permit parking system, and then it's the first one
Yeah,
on the backside
on the backside of the page.
of your resolution. It was in the packet.
I'm looking for the resolution.
Yeah, what's the reference point?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's. So,
It's at the very beginning of the.
Like this blue page.
I will point out that we made this public hearing just to discuss the 250 rate increase and the increase for all day to 15 and change the paid parking season. So are you now looking at something else?
well, I wanted, because it was part of this when I reviewed it this afternoon, I just wanted to point this one thing out that we
Okay.
need independent clearing up. First bullet, permit parking. It says, permits are valid, third to the last line, permits are valid for the first 2 hours of parking, and permit holders may purchase additional parking at the meters following the initial 2 hours if desired. A person with a permit can use their 2 hours and move their vehicle and get another 2 hours, right?
Probably.
Yeah, so that was not clear to me that,
But if you're parking all day in front of your business,
Oh, no,
it'd
no.
probably be wise to feed the meter.
no, absolutely, I'm just saying that people. I thought in the olden days when this came up, people were very upset about the paid parking, and the permit was a way to get people who frequent the village to have more freedom of movement. And just reading this in the context of this discussion, I found that if there hasn't been an issue with the way this has been written for the last 7 or 8 years, and it's not an issue, but it's not clear to me as a first reader that I'm not cheating by moving my vehicle to another 2-hour parking spot.
Okay. Yeah.
That's all.
All right, so. I am going to, it's now been, open for a while, 15 minutes after 7 sort of thing. So I'm going to close the public hearing and let you go forward with discussing it. How's that?
So I guess there's 3 different things to discuss. Let's start with the cost portion of this. So the proposal is to go from $2 an hour to, which is payable in 15-minute increments, to $2.50 an hour payable in 30-minute increments. Costs that need to be shared on that. All right. And the second monetary related item is to increase the all-day parking in the double-day parking lot from $15 or from $14 a day to $15 a day. All right, so the one I feel like we might discuss is the extension of the season from Memorial Day weekend near the end of May to May 1st as a start date.
So beginning a month earlier, essentially.
Yes, I'm definitely opposed to this, as we've discussed in previous meetings. I feel like this targets more of our local population than the tourists in the area, and I am very opposed to it.
I'm very opposed to this. I don't think it makes any sense, and I don't think that we're gonna see a major increase in revenue for paid parking on that end. And I think that it would alienate a lot of our residents.
I find, we had almost 1,000 permits sold last year, is that right, Ellen? So pretty much everybody in the village picks up a permit anyway. So they would probably be using their permit and not actually feeding the meters.
You would be surprised how many people
All right.
refuse to buy a permit.
And I've worked downtown for the last 15 years of my life, it's one thing that I've heard over and over again. And it doesn't matter, like, I'm not necessarily talking about Cooperstown Village residents. I'm just talking about the general population of Otsego County who still comes to Cooperstown during that time. And then hard cut off as soon as paid parking starts, they refuse. And yes, that is their choice. That has nothing to do with us, but as a board who I hope supports our downtown businesses, I think we could give this a little.
Okay, you convinced me.
Well, again, do we have any, we don't have any real impact data.
I wish
How do
I,
we quantify that?
I wish I had brought the material that we shared earlier.
Yeah, because it did show, we didn't have
It was about
that much in May, is my
I think
recollection.
it was like $85 for 1 week or something.
Yeah, I mean, until Dreams Park starts, which is typically the week after Memorial Day, it's really fairly limited. It is somewhat limited in the fall, even although with nicer weather at that point in time, there are a few more people around.
What is it you're referring to? I didn't think we had any information about May.
Yeah, gave you week by week for the past, going back to 19.
It was in this.
Right, but it's from when we activate, I'm confused. Until we activate our machines, we're not getting any information. And I thought
But it was clear from the data that Cindy showed that we were totally reliant pretty much on the 12 or whatever
Yeah.
weeks of the Dream Park season. That is really the bulk of it.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying it seems to, again, it was anecdotal, but it prompted the question, should we look into this, that there seemed to be a lot of people showing up in early May to be tourists. And so we don't know we can't quantify that because we haven't activated our machines. So the question is, there's a balance between enhancing our revenues, avoiding raising taxes otherwise, having people who have permits, and their permit will start on May 1 instead of Memorial Day, and they'll have that protection. And if I can't speak to the people who won't come to Cooperstown when parking is in effect. I don't understand that.
But I was gonna see if I could pull up on my phone, just so, you're right, we don't know how many people are here as tourists in May. We,
Don't have any way to know.
yeah, I mean, the Hall of Fame numbers might tell us, but I'm not sure that they would provide that level of detail in terms of what week by week.
You know, because the museums have opened and so forth. So I'm in favor of it. Certainly, if we find it's not remunerative, or we find people that there's this groundswell of opposition, we can consider that and reconsider our vote. But
I'm hearing good arguments not to move it, and I'm not hearing great arguments to move it. I mean,
Let's divide this at this point. I think everyone's had an opportunity to speak on this. Let's divide this into the two monetary components. Is there a motion relative to the maximum charge of $15 for a full day and $2.50 per hour, payable in 30-minute increments? Is there a motion relative to those
I'll
two?
make that.
Motion made by Cindy, second by Hannah. All in favor? All right, is there a motion to begin the paid parking season on May 1st?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made. Is there a second? Okay, I think the motion fails because there is no second. So we will move on. Thank you all. I believe we are at double day.
Well, exciting things happened, even though I was sad to not be there. The Friends of Doubleday presented the village with a check for $10,000 to go towards the umpire room at the Doubleday expansion, which is very exciting. Thank you to them. And then there was one piece of business. The Chamber of Commerce wants to host a midweek game in early May or April, and they are asking that the Board of Trustees waives the uniform requirement and also reduces the rental fee from $400 to $200.
All right, is there a motion? Is there discussion first?
I assume that that time of year, aside from high school games, which I would not want to
Bump.
bump in
Yeah.
order to do this, is a relatively slow period in the field's usage.
Yeah, there is you know, some things occurring, and Marcia, I think what would be key is, we could stipulate that in the motion, assuming that Marcia has not already received any bookings or reservations, you know, so any available date, they would just need to settle on their date and see what's available with the village. So I think as long as that's, you know, part of the motion consideration, would be good to go.
I have a
Mhm.
point, the cutting the fee to $200, what does that do to our actual expenses? Would we be subsidizing that, for field maintenance?
You're talking about incremental expenses per game, right? Not average expenses per game.
Yeah, it was, and you know, they
We have
probably,
there's a midweek game, and the field's prepped for each game, as I understand. So instead of $400, we're being asked to charge $200, and I'm asking how that affects our actual costs of prepping the field before and after.
you know,
I thought our fees.
I don't know if Mitch can quickly send info, but there was actually a line in our budget for sort of, you know, the sand prep, et cetera, and it's not much. I wanted to say it was like $50 a game or 55 at one point when it was
And staff
calculated.
time. And staff time.
The staff would be there, whether they, you know, they prep the field and, you know, if it rains, they cover it, but it's not like they're on the field umpiring or anything.
So the elements of our $400 fee are not
Fixed costs.
expense driven.
Not totally, no.
Well, that's
It's,
right.
well, it is
Trying to
as
find
far as the cost for Doubleday. But I do think there's recognition here that the chamber is an organization that, again, you know, promotes the village. And this is a fundraiser, and I feel like we would be willing to accommodate them in this.
Okay, well, that's a consideration, fine, but I just wanted to know
Okay,
that we were thinking about cost. And doing that.
so is there
I'd love to make that motion.
to just waive the uniform fee, to lower the rental fee to 200 and have them secure a date that is not already being utilized with Marcia. So there's the motion, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and motion to accept the Doubleday.
So you,
Joe, second by Sydney, all in favor?
I,
Moving on to scripts committee.
I should note under trolley, the first bullet point, it should indicate that we were holding a public hearing to increase the paid parking rates. We have already done that. I'm happy to take questions on any of this. We've already talked about the Susquehanna and Beaver Street intersection. That was a topic of much discussion at this meeting, and as the mayor pointed out, the immediate solution is to adjust the lights, but you can see some other ideas, some of which you probably thought of, that came up as part of that discussion. The other thing that I wanted to point out is at the end of page 2. And that is, you know, this February federal break deadline seems to be a very popular one. There is a program called RAISE, which is designed for infrastructure projects that will improve safety, environmental sustainability, quality of life, mobility, and community connectivity, as well as economic connectedness, tourism, state of good repair, partnership, and collaboration and innovation. You can read all that in a minute. We have been working with Delta and specifically with Michael Haas on Hoffman Lane and Pioneer Alley, which seem to be a good fit for this particular federal opportunity. That said, the deadline is February 28th, and Delta is not really planning to have this project done until May. So as with the other one, I would like to make a motion that if things come together, we apply for the RAISE grant program for Hoffman Lane and or Pioneer Alley.
Second.
Can I just ask, I know you reached out to Michael Thomas. He had some, he didn't necessarily, reading this, feel it was a strong application at this point. Do you disagree? Just so I know.
Yes, I do disagree.
Okay.
I think that we can write a very strong, I think we can hit most of the bullet points that are part of that long list. With this particular project. And I think that we have experience working with federal transportation grants and have, I hope, a good reputation. I certainly hear from the Binghamton office that they look forward to working with us again. So if we can pull it together, I think it's worth going. My concern, and one of his concerns as well, is that they will only have an estimated budget by the end of this month.
Does this grant go up against the reconnecting communities? Because it was sort of referenced in his response.
It is, they are all part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, but they seem to be releasing these individual pots.
But because we have been, as you know, contacted by Senator Schumer's office relative to our reconnecting communities grant. So hopefully they're looking at favorably. I just would want to make sure that it's not.
No, I don't think one disqualifies us from the other.
Perfect. All right, so the motion was made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Were there any other questions about anything in the minutes?
Yours a flag vote? Is there a flag vote?
In the buildings,
Oh, is that in buildings?
yeah.
Okay, I see. I wrote it in one spot then. And, yep, they were. That was it. Want to go on into buildings and saw that?
Absolutely. So we can, again, I'm happy to answer questions. We've been starting to work on budgeting for the coming year. You should know that the elevator is working.
Was working when he came in.
Yes. And our one action item from this concerns the flag proposal that we heard about I think back in December. And our suggestion is this: we really like to recognize the work that Oliver has done on this proposal. We think he's put a lot of thought into it and he's come up with a good design. We realize that there could be a lot more that's done to declare an official flag of the village of Cooperstown, but our suggestion is to declare this flag the official flag of the village for 2023.
So by the time you order it, it gets delivered, it's obsolete.
Well, part of the issue is that Oliver is a senior in high school. And so this would give him the opportunity, and it could always be reviewed, right? I honestly don't see a lot of flag proposals coming out of the woodwork. But, you know, we could be surprised, but rather than extend this process now, given his, you know, short time with us in the immediate future, why not recognize the work that he's done and
Run it up the bag flagpole and see who's the.
Okay, the motion has been made. Is there a second? Second by Joe. Okay, so Discussion?
I like this idea because I think it's really important to recognize his work for all of this, because it really, I mean, it's very impressive for a young person to put in the effort. I think it sets a really nice precedent. My only concern would be, if this would become something where there would be a new flag every year.
Yeah.
And that I don't think would be sustainable, nor would it do what the idea of a flag is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to bring people together, so I think I would be totally in favor of this as long as it was a sort of interim until we establish a more official permanent flag. Because I think that would just make more sense for.
Well, for now, it's just for the year, and I think the hard stop is useful.
Can I ask, the flag he brought as a demo wasn't large enough, is that it?
I don't believe so, correct?
Okay. So we would order, and he said that one costs about $100, so this would come from buildings to purchase it probably a little more, yeah.
And our suggestion is to fly it on the flagpole immediately outside the Fair Street entrance here, so it would need to be comparable in size for the American.
Divide it there, a little small.
It was-
Okay, all right, so there's the motion, the second, all in favor?
Aye.
And,
Let me call Oliver, make this day.
Yeah, and we would like him, we're hoping he would be willing to write something for
Which-
Village Voices.
I have an update on that. He did submit a summary for Village Voices. So
Oh, great.
I have two questions on buildings. So HKK submitted another invoice for the Skylight project, but we've already submitted for reimbursement. Is that what that is?
That was the one that we approved last month. It was the engineering fee. It was a few $100. And we received that invoice after we had already submitted.
And it was specific to the Skylight project.
Yeah,
And the skylights were not included on our ESD.
they are included in our.
So that 300 could be used on that.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like you've assembled a revised spreadsheet.
I keep adding to it, yes.
Yes, but could you send that around to everyone?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because we must be there, because we were pretty much there with the windows.
The windows, we should be there.
We should be there. Okay, that would be so fabulous.
And Mitch, who's probably listening in, will have quite the job in terms of documenting all of these various expenditures. But that will be-
He's got your spreadsheets. All right, motion to accept the buildings committee report. Sitting, second by Hannah, all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to treasurer's report.
In your package, you have our LoSAP statement for December 2022 for the review, and we did the bank reconciliations on Thursday at our finance committee meeting, except for the December 2022 A fund, which Deb did not have available. It's failed, it just wasn't available yet. The sales tax report from the county, either, it's not in our supplemental package, so we didn't, that has not arrived. Correct, Jen? We have a Firefly invoice. They're the ones who handle our administration of the LoSAP program. And the retainer for the engagement period of January 1 to December 31, that this year, this calendar year is $2,900, and that means we approve the payment of that.
Motion made by Joe, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
We have a recommendation from Mitch to make a transfer from the sewer plant equipment reserve to for asbestos removal. We have a boiler that has to be taken out of the plant, and there was a discovery of asbestos associated with it, and it's a very costly operation to do that, given all the environmental protection requirements, and the price for doing so was $24,580 from Sunstream Corporation, and I move we approve the procurement with Sunstream at that price to remove the.
Subject to
Subject to
permissive referendum.
That is a subject to permit.
Yeah, because we switched the use.
Okay.
I'll second.
second by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
We also use Jefferson Solutions to do our actuarial work for those who have become eligible for LoSAP disbursements.
It's not LoSAP, it's our post-employee retirement
Retirement.
benefits. Okay,
Sorry. right.
not as nice as
Thank you.
LoSAP. Okay.
The invoice for that is $4,150, and I move the approval of that payment.
Motion made by Joe, second by Richard, all in favor?
We have, now on our capital projects, we have the Grove Street Culvert through the construction pay application number 3 for $214,905.20. I move the approval of payment.
I enthusiastically second.
Enthusiastically, and seconded by Cindy. Cindy, all in favor?
For our salt shed, let's say that fast 10 times, our salt shed Skylar Principal Design invoice number 22-243 in the amount of $125. I move the approval of the payment.
Made by Joe, second by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
There's a second salt shed pay app from Park Construction number 5 in the amount of $90,679.25. That payment.
Motion made by Joe, second by Cindy. All in favor?
We talked about the Huffman Lane and Pine Island project earlier. We do have Delta engineers doing some preliminary site review work and surveys and so forth, and they have submitted invoice number 1 in the amount of $6,593.48. I move the approval.
Motion made by Joe, second by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
Now we have, I thought I found that the price for that change order press box. What it made, I heard it in there.
It's 3,900.
Is that 3,900?
As you recall, we approved the bleachers, which have side railings, et cetera, last July, and so that they could be fabricated. And will be hopefully completed at the end of this month, beginning of next month. But in the changes that had occurred, there was no railing initially along the back of the press box, and we didn't want them flipping over the back of seats of the bleachers. So this is really nice, and we thought this was a great price. This railing will completely match the side railings on the bleachers. So I'll move that we have this, accept this change order request for $3,900 for the press box railing. Okay. Second by Sydney, all in favor? What was on it? I couldn't tell, it was over there.
Aye.
Yes.
For the third floor window restoration, we have an invoice from HKK and the number 3486 in the amount of $1,290. And with that.
Second, all in favor?
And we have the Axion invoices in our packet tonight. For this total here. $28,000 is the amount of $28,000. I move the approval of the payment of that.
Motion made by Joe, second by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
In personnel, you have the overtime analysis and the leave analysis for your reviews. We have a police training request, which I move the approval of. It's for an active attack practical training class for Brad Ross and Jarrell Severa at $50 each.
I think, we'll definitely approve this. I'm not sure of the sequence of how this came, but we have a training request.
Yeah,
form.
you just sent that to them or.
Yeah, I don't know, but certainly they should know about it, because if we're sending off to people and we're hiring, bringing part-timers to cover here, there are associated costs, and that's all stipulated on that form.
Which he has filled out in the past, so I'm assuming, I'll make sure.
I'm sorry, Jen.
He's filled it out before, but I'll make sure he fills it out.
Okay, yeah, just as long as it's filled out, that would be great. So motion made to approve by Joe, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.
And we're going to discuss the staff salary review. I think we did a little earlier.
So, you may recall that I think it was like in December, and then I noted it was done again in, or November and December. We have recognized that some of our, staff salaries are not in line with, other municipalities. We did an examination comparison of ours with a Nikon salary survey. We also looked at adjacent municipalities. As you know, we had approved previously an hourly increase for our non-union. We've now looked at the DPW union, and I will make the motion that we increase these the hourly rate for these positions effective January 24th using contingency funds. And that way we will also be able to work on our 23-24 budget, considering all those factors. So for the sewer operator, chief operator trainee, and the water plant operator and water plant operator trainee, it's $1 an hour increase. For our streets superintendent, it's a $2.80 increase per hour. For all the other positions, having HMEO mechanic, laborer, park supervisor, double day, and the PEO, it will be a $2.25 increase. That is my motion. Is there a second? By Joe. All those in favor? Thank you. It's very needed, and as I said, we'll move on and look at others, but we had been given that request first.
Moving to the one action item in the finances, the approval of abstract and transfers in your packet, and I move for the approval of that.
Second by Cindy, all in favor?
And I believe
Wait, which one did you did the parts and the labor?
the laborer always is in. No, we need to approve the approval of
The laborer.
The laborer,
Yes.
yeah.
So you also have that, it's actually on the same new employee status change form on the bottom half. So it's, Dennis Dibble, streets laborer, at the pay rate of $17.55 an hour. I'll make that motion, second by Sid. I was looking this way, Sid. All in favor?
Wait, we did the park supervisor one, aren't you?
I thought you did that already, didn't you?
No, we
No,
need to move the approval of the.
Oh, okay, so you moved for the parks and it was seconded by, well, let Sydney do the parks one, all in favor?
Thank you.
And then. Was that it? Abstracts and transfers? You did that?
Yes.
You jumped ahead of that before personnel? Okay,
No, I just did it after personnel,
okay, that's all
and then
done.
you called me back to personnel.
All right. So the only other thing in finance would be the information that you were emailed about NICLAS. So I don't know if you're aware of it, but actually our county, which has a huge budget, about 120 million, actually uses NICLAS as a investment forum. They are able to generate quite a bit of revenue with it, and in some ways keep their tax rate low because they don't have to increase. So Ellen Ruffles was very kind to spend some time with our treasurer, and he also attended a webinar that was taught by, well, I should say, we requested of NICLAS to get more information. And there's an additional item, it was handed out, it looks like this. It's in your addendum that talks about NICLAS. So last Wednesday, right, Joe? Finance committee treasurer, county treasurer, village treasurer met with this individual, Joel Friedman, via Zoom, and reviewed it. We obviously had looked over the materials, we had quite a bit of questions, and within a few minutes, he answered all of them. There is no minimum. This interest rate pays daily, so it's not like you have to put your money in and wait till the end of the month or the end of the quarter. It invests and you get the interest daily. It's you could see it all online. It was great doing it with Alan Ruffles because he actually brought up the county sheet so we could see the different components are there. These are very safe investments. Townships surrounding us already use them. We were just kind of ignorant of it. I know that was what were our other concerns, the minimum balance,
Yeah.
the ability to get the funds out. This is amazing because you're thinking, oh, but it's all wire transfer. If you decide at 11 o'clock in the morning, oh my gosh, we need those funds. As long as it comes before noon, by 12:30, it's in your bank account at the Bank of Cooperstown. We did look, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just gonna say, if you can follow along with Ellen, if you look at page 2 of this, because the attributes of the program really were kind of clear and well expressed by Dan Friedman, and you'll see it here, the safety, the liquidity, the convenience, flexibility, and the good returns on the interest rate of 4%. The flexibility, I think Ellen was about to turn to that, the liquidity, it's available on the day you ask for funds. The flexibility was of interest to us because we have so many sub-accounts
Yeah.
that we can do this almost line item by line item to deposit, have depository funds.
Right, that was our big concern, that if, you know, they might be looking at the village, do a lump. And then we'd have to say, okay, well, that percentage goes back to water, and because obviously water and sewer funds that might be invested have to go back to water and sewer, et cetera. So, no, that was the beauty of having Ellen show his screen, because it was very clear that they actually, and they will tell you, they actually print off reports for your auditors. And just so you know, before we even began looking at this, it was encouraged by our bond counselor. And I thought, well, what are we getting for interest? You don't want to know at the Bank of Cooperstown, where we have quite a bit of assets. The highest interest rate is 0.1%, not even 1%. And many of our accounts are at 0.012. So Alan, and obviously interest rates will be fluctuating, but he's been getting 4.1%. And these are they're treasuries, etc. So
One other aspect of this was, well, who are these people? Well, they're regulated, they're sanctioned by the state, and they're controlled by the SEC. So there are a lot of external controls over them that will to our protection, for our protection.
okay, and then did you did the municipal resolution?
That's in the packet.
That's in the packet, as well as, and I also wanted, you know, we want to make sure all our I's were dotted and T's crossed. So we also examined our investment policy, and in case you had any concerns, our investment policy in section 12 has always included this, and this is the investment policy that is approved annually at our organizational meeting. So you approved this, and it does allow the treasurer to do cooperative investing, and that's what this is called. Now, the only slight change we probably should make, and we haven't even opened these accounts, but we're again trying to make sure everything's done properly. We need to designate under Bank of Cooperstown, and I have that here somewhere, that us is also a depository, and this was what was emailed to you. And so we're under section 7, designation of depositories. Bank of Cooperstown is listed, and NICLAS. Joe and I discussed a maximum amount, and we were a little you know, we felt probably the safest thing, because we can always adjust it. We can even adjust it in April when we approve this organizational policy again, but we began with 6 million. And that's just the maximum, obviously, that wouldn't be immediately what we'd be doing. So, I will move that we update our investment policy under 7 designation of depositories to include 9 class for a maximum deposit amount of 6 million. Second by Joe. Any questions?
I have a question.
Mhm.
So with some of our other investments, we have very consciously avoided certain products.
Mhm.
Their stipulation is NICLAS only invest in investments legally permitted under New York state law. There are maybe things that are legally permitted under New York state law that we don't want to invest in, like fossil fuels,
I thought those,
fossil fuels.
These are really more,
I mean, we know most of them are, I assume like treasury bonds.
That's
like
exactly
to
right.
have a guarantee.
Right, and I thought that I heard him say something about tailoring what they would put the.
100%, we get to stipulate some of that, so that would be a very easy ask of Joe.
I think that we should, you know, be
Yeah.
very conscious of what we are.
But I think that's what I heard. If I'm wrong, Ellen, correct me, but I thought I heard him say that.
Mhm.
Not having had any involvement in that, are these collateralized in some fashion?
Yeah, the night class itself has a,
Mhm.
it's not a bonding requirement, but I guess it is a collateral.
It's a wrong
Yeah.
collateralization.
What's so interesting to me is how they can make this work, and they can, but because they're doing it under close scrutiny from both the state and.
They are audited by the New York State Comptroller. Also FCC evaluated, and NICLAS provides the annual report.
And then the controller would certainly require.
Yeah.
It's collateralized.
Thanks for bringing that up.
And here it is, NICLAS is considered extremely safe investment because of the liquidity and yield. New York State is a safer state because the state itself, under the New York State Comptroller, has a liquidity requirement, etc. You know, so they have to also be holding that. And as I say, there are surrounding townships who have been using this, and the county has effectively.
Yeah, I think she mentioned school district, a couple of school districts.
Okay, so I made the motion, it was seconded. Was there then discussion on the investment policy addition of the depository? All those in favor? And then the other component is that resolution. And I will move that we approve this municipal cooperation resolution. The key contact, as you see, would be Deb Guerin, our treasurer. That is, she's authorized by our investment policy. And we would need a motion. So I move that we approve this municipal cooperation resolution with NICLAS. Joe has just seconded. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you. All right. And that's the end of finance, right?
It is.
A motion to accept the finance report is presented by Joe. Second by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
Grants and projects update. Doubleday Field. Interestingly, I'm sure most of you know, we have a ban, I should say, on Doubleday Field, which terminated on January 18th, and so it was renewed. We were really panicking about that because we were afraid we were going to hit a 4% rate. We've been at about 1.01 for the past several years. But there were some bids that were 4 and over, or close to 4, but we feel very pleased. We received an effective net interest rate of 3.099 from Jeffries LLC, who had been the one who provided the ban previously. And as I'm sure you're aware, it's going down every year. We began at 5.8. This was for 5.185 because we have paid off. And this does have a premium of 46,716, so we were all in all pretty pleased with that. Also on Doubleday Field, we are moving forward. The bunk off has sort of finalized some plans with Delaware Engineering, and they foresee starting very soon. And as soon as the bleachers arrive, and are very optimistic that with good weather, obviously, if it's snow like this in April, they aren't going to be able to begin, but with good weather, we will certainly be underway in April. Cindy, do you want to do the next few?
Yeah, so the window restoration work is ongoing. We're actually gonna have James here on Thursday morning to look at the windows on this level so that we can consider including them in our next budget year, but everything is on target for that. The salt shed project, hopefully everyone's been down Linden Avenue and seen our brand new salt shed. We're waiting on electricity, but all is good there. And the Grove Street culvert, that was the final payout that I enthusiastically approved, so that project should be completed.
But we are withholding the retainage.
Right, there's a curb issue right now.
Yeah, it was hit, I think, by something and cracked it, and yeah, so until those issues are resolved. Yeah.
Right. And Hoffman Lane and Pioneer Alley, as you've heard a couple times now, that project is in the works. The good news is they did before the ground froze some perk tests, and we have excellent drainage, which is good from an environmental standpoint, because that project was really designed around finding green solutions to addressing our stormwater, and so people aren't splashing through those puddles that we've all splashed through.
Yeah. I think I'll add an F here, Wi-Fi, and which has been on and off and on there forever. This was a grant that I think actually came in under my predecessor, Jeff, but you know, did not move anywhere during the pandemic, and then got very stalled by the component supply demand issues, and the units we needed that will fit inside the base of our lamppost were just not available. We tried other units and they didn't fit. But I have been communicating with Midtown and been told they have the units in hand. They have now arrived. So we are on schedule. We'd love to get that one done and crossed off our list this spring. So moving on, Parks Board.
So really 2 points that could be brought up, and obviously, if you have any questions about the minutes, feel free to ask. The first is the creation of a satellite or non-resident park caretaker position. So we went through our current caretaker positions and we use those as a template to essentially create one that doesn't have those residential requirements and doesn't, you know, there's certain aspects of that caretaker position that doesn't make sense unless you live on the property. So we came up with this position. Everyone on the board seemed to be in favor of it, and the next step really is just to see if it works out numbers wise. Something that was brought up, I don't know if it's in the minutes actually. Oh yes, so essentially something to consider is like, if this non-resident caretaker position with an hourly salary, if it ends up being a position that you are paid far more than the resident caretaker position, just because of how things work out. And trying to figure out a way to make sure that we're not de-incentivizing the caretaker, like the resident caretaker position, because the way that we were seeing this function would be, it would be almost like a stepping stone into the resident caretaker position. You would learn the ropes, sort of fill in both parts where needed, giving those caretakers some much deserved time off, and then, you know, have the option to maybe tack on more responsibilities as it's making sense, so. Yeah, so I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention, I think the next step would just be to figure out, you know, if this is even monetarily feasible.
I have a question. The idea of having somebody who's a non-resident to spell the residence seems like a great one to me. I was surprised when you said, and this could be a stepping stone into it, because I think there's a set of people out there who would just want to do that, be willing to do it as a part-time gig and be done with it, so. I didn't see so much of the training, and that's kind of a minor issue, but I don't understand the disincentive. If a non-resident caretaker is going to get paid $15 an hour, how does that adversely affect the resident?
So I think it just ends up with the hours that non-resident caretaker works, and if that ends up being, you know, much more than the stipend. But on the other side of things, the stipend is meant to, and the resident caretaker position is meant to include the residents, which you're essentially, you know, you don't have to worry about paying any rent or anything for that. But it was a concern that everyone on the board had, you know, how do we, basically, we'd have to figure out the numbers in such a way that one position doesn't completely overshadow the other one financially. And I would like to point out that the reason why I say it would be a stepping stone is because this non-resident caretaker position is probably going to be someone who's working most of the weekends. And so I could see that as being, you know, some. Yeah, so it's just, yeah, so those were just the concerns that were brought up. And I think this is also something, I can't remember just because my brain is a little bit everywhere, but we did talk about increasing the stipend.
What I was going to say, not so, because we did increase the stipend, if you recall,
right.
so it was just but we do need to, just as we looked at union, non-union, etc., we need to look at the lifeguards.
Right.
So let's connect with Mitch this in the next few weeks, because those figures need to be set before we go into our budget process, which begins next month. And I think, you know, there was some discussion about trying to figure, you know, if the housing was not valued, was there another way to generate income from that? Because they're given free lakeshore housing, you know.
So, and are the residential caretakers, you said they're given a stipend? So is it based on an hourly rate?
No, it's
No.
really more of a set summer stipend, and it traditionally hadn't been terribly high because they're essentially getting
The residents.
lakefront housing for 3 months or whatever.
Right, so the resident will be getting exactly what they bargained for, plus 2 days off.
Yeah, or one, I saw you put it in there, and that's what we'll have to
So,
work out. I think we just have to crunch numbers.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge benefit to the residents to have that time away to be themselves, and yet still have their free residence and still not have their stipend affected because they're basically given the paid time off. So I don't see a disincentive really.
All right, so we will work on those, both the lifeguard rates and the satellite or non-resident.
Yeah.
Part caretaker.
And the second point that I want to bring up is just that at the Parks Board meeting, we talked about the boat trailer parking at Fish Road. And I think you know, a majority of the board was in agreement that it would be an interesting idea to have a seasonal, you know, select spots for trailers, and that the rest would be incentivized to park in the trolley walk. I don't remember if this was something that I brought up in our special meeting or in this meeting, so I'm not seeing it here, but we were also talking about how if if that was something that we put into place, how, you know, how we talk about those who are getting their boats checked. They get a little sticker that is essentially their parking pass for that area. If they're getting their boats checked and they have to park in the trolley lot, that maybe that sort of, you know, sticker or whatever.
It's separate on the
Gives
trolley.
them, yeah, gives them a free.
Maybe something more.
Yeah. Cause then it just might be an easier situation of getting back down.
Yeah.
Particularly when the trolleys are running, you know, we do
Yeah.
have a lot of boat usage into the fall and historically our trolleys have stopped Labor Day, but yeah, I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
I did see you said in here, we can't charge for parking because we've accepted funding. In 2001, the village did receive state funding to repair the seawall. And they repaired the prior wooden docks that the village would install. Since then, we've invested $275,000 in the 2 floating docks, and that was totally village funded. And we've certainly communicated with the state on it, and as you know, we have 2 different rates for those docks. Prior for village residents and non-residents. Prior to accepting those funds in 2001, and we sometimes heard this where someone will come in and say, oh, I thought only village residents could be on those docks. We did. The village bought that land for Fish Road and the boat livery in 1961, and it was a village resolution. We bonded, so it was totally village taxpayer funds, and as a result, they were allowed to use it. When we did accept state funds, we then had to open it to non-residents, but because they don't pay taxes, we're allowed to charge those 2 different rates. The issue of parking, I mean, think about it, Doubleday law is paid parking. That is not the issue, as long as we treat village residents and non-residents the same, you can charge. I don't think I've been to a busy state park in the summertime, and I've actually been turned away if there isn't parking, but you pay for parking. So, you know, it's an idea that maybe isn't right now, but I do not want to totally negate it. I think it's something that next year we should once again look at, because I think it would really examine it. And right now, you know, we're giving a boon to anybody who has a dock space. We're saying park here all day for free. You know, and if there's a space, and we'll grant you, there's only like 34 spaces and we have close to 80 slips, so you're never going to get one, but you know, you can't anticipate getting one, particularly on crowded days, but there is the option to do paid parking there.
Could we consider, I like your trolley idea, but could we consider anyone who has a parking sticker for the season, you know, the 2-hour parking, gets a stamp that says they have a dock space, that's with that gives you unlimited parking in that space, because you say you can't go out for just 2 hours or an hour and a half. But if that annual parking permit plus the stamp, would that be a way to protect villagers who wanted to park? And it would still be paid parking, but
I worry a little bit, because what happened before we did, and that was probably about 2017, 16, 17, that we instituted the 2-hour parking unless you had your dock rental permit slip on your dashboard or you had a boat inspection, is that employees were parking there. And all you had to do was walk down there in the morning and you would say, see the tags for certain area businesses, you know, and the young people walking up that road. So it was totally employee parking.
right, but this would forestall that. If we had a sticker that was a combination parking permit with an identifier on it that said, this is a dock pass.
So like instead of that thing that people put in the.
It have to include like the kayak rack, like.
I think it'd be easier just to do how we do it separately now with they get the piece of paper that says they have a dock space.
Yeah, so we could,
It's gonna be totally.
Yeah, well, you know what, these are all ideas we can float and think about for another time, so thank you for looking at all that.
Yeah, I don't have anything else for
Okay,
remarks.
motion to accept Parks report.
So,
Well, I was looking at Hannah and second of Richard. All in favor?
I have a parks question.
Yes,
Because I keep seeing this hockey game being advertised at
Yes.
Badger Park. And,
yes.
and I seem to recall that we did talk about that, but I also know that the ice skating rink has been open like 2 days.
Right.
Are they
So
aware of how tenuous this idea
I
is?
don't think so, and I was actually just talking to someone on the Friends of the Parks this morning, and I was gonna reach out to Mitch. Just about trying to figure out and streamline like communication about why the rink isn't open, and I think not very many, people step outside, they say, oh, it's cold. It's not cold enough to keep ice frozen enough for you to skate on it. So I also received a communication from this person about this hockey game. The rink hasn't been able to be open I think it was open last week for like 2 days.
Right.
So. To answer your question.
I just wouldn't want there to be incredible disappointment and the village to look like the bad guy, all of this, when it's really temperatures that are beyond our.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that the Friends of the Parks, especially after our conversation this morning, is more aware of the situation. They were under the impression that it just wasn't being maintained. But that's just, I mean, you can't plow the snow if there's a thin layer of ice and everything is water, and it doesn't make any sense. So we're working on streamlining that communication, and maybe it is also not just, I think the Friends of the Parks will get a better sense, so they'll be able to communicate that. But then also, I suggested the option of figuring out like clear signage at the rink that sort of delineates why it's closed today. Like I'm taking this from literally my vacation that I was just at the beach. There's different flags, any flag color means something differently. It's as easy as that of like saying today, it's closed because it wasn't 18 degrees.
Are we talking about winter carnival or?
No.
This is Warriors.
Yeah, we're here.
So who is there been because somewhere we probably need, just like when the school.
Right.
Use our rink for, they bring classes over and it was wonderful, but we do need certificate of insurance. In fact, NYMER just had a thing on reducing risk and how you need those certificates of insurance. So I'm not sure who's coordinating this. I'm looking at Jenna and she says we haven't received anything. So somehow we need the village needs to protect itself here.
So I got this email. And this, Barry Shelley said that he stopped by the office to Marcia. I don't know if there was any paperwork. No. He also said that he had been emailing me a few times, but none of his emails were going through, so, he got my email from Facebook. So I can encourage him to come back and fill out.
Usually we have them fill out the permit and give us
Yeah.
Right,
But it's right on the village website under parks is the park usage form,
right.
permit form. So you can just direct into that or download it and send it directly to him. We do need something in place, and I don't know who's sponsoring them, if it's the Friends of Parks or what.
I think that's the other thing, is that he has not been able to get in contact with anyone from the Friends.
Okay.
So I will also, in my email back, I'll CC the president of the Friends of the Parks. We'll get it straightened out.
And just make sure the village is covered.
who's the president? Oh, is it?
All right, we accept it.
Yes.
And you just asked a question afterwards. All right, so moving on to water and sewer.
So there, on your auxiliary packet, there are two recommendations for approval of fee waivers. Item 3 and 4 in your supplemental packet The Weldon's water bill had a late fee associated with it of $336.44. They had an unfortunate issue with a leak that was politically discovered and ended up involving a very substantial bill in the thousands of dollars, which they paid appropriately. But they did ask for this amount to be waived as a late fee, and the recommendation is to approve that.
236.44.
Correct.
So Joe made that motion, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is a $3.78 request. There was an error in Nicholas Weir's water bill, and that amount that was associated with the village accounting. I recommend that we approve the credit of that amount to Mr. Weir.
Motion made by Joe, second by Richard, all in favor?
Aye.
A couple of other items in your minutes. There had been a considerable discussion about continued acceptance of waste gray water from the Dreams Park, which actually added up to quite a source of income for the sewer plant.
$36,000
a year. And after considering the pros and cons of additional testing and the risk of kind of violating permit limits, the recommendation from the committee and with the advice of Mitch was to continue to accept the gray water and bear the cost of added testing because the income from it far outweighed the cost.
And we could also increase, that was the discussion, the rate we charge. It's a few cents.
So that's more of a report. Do we have to approve that? Ongoing acceptance?
Well, it's basically a policy, and the water sewer at this point has said that they would do it, and we certainly can. That at this time, the villages would like them to consider a slight increase in the percent rates so that we don't get hit. What's happening? This is not wastewater; it's wash water. When they do laundry, we've been picking it up and we process it through our wastewater treatment plant. But the truck that picks it up is probably the same truck that also the septic systems. And there's a certain level of mercury that's probably in that tank, not per se in their water, but then their water gets a little contaminated. This was a concern last year. It was tested. They never found high enough levels. So the matter is just, let's have, let's have wastewater treatment, have Jared put together the cost for the total cost to be around 500, it says,
Right.
plus the cents we're charging, and see if he would recommend an increase in the cents.
Oh, in the gallon per gallon.
Per gallon,
I see.
or whatever it is. I think that would be the way to go, and make sure that way the village is all covered. Because if we don't take it, they're probably gonna have to go to Oneana.
Right,
So-
and bear in mind that as you pointed out, that if it's a $500 testing cost and we're getting 36,000, so I got the impression that wasn't per test, that was the total testing for mercury.
I think it is, but if we're accepting it, I do think that there's no reason we should say, okay, so now we'll be earning 500 less because we gotta do mercury testing. It's gotta come from there to cover that cost. I would go back to that. Is that good with everyone?
Yeah, I just don't want to lose them to it.
You see
They
me?
want to take it someplace else.
They could, but yeah, they're gonna have a lot longer trucking fee.
And more expensive.
And it's bounty animal charge more.
Okay, the second substantial item was the question of raising our water and sewer rates to meet future anticipated expenses, at which we haven't, and Ellen knows more of this than I, but it's been so long since we raised rates. They were last raised in 2007.
As we talked about this on January 4th at our workshop, and it was obvious I was throwing a lot of numbers and figures. I did say that it's been going on 16 years since the village has ever increased its water and sewer rates. The last increase was made in 2007. So what I tried, and I know Cindy was very concerned about increases in utility rates, so I felt that I would try and do a mock-up. So you would have a much clearer representation, and it becomes difficult because, as I mentioned, on January 4th, we are like the only people around to measure our water usage in cubic feet. And remember that 1 cubic foot is, and I have it on, maybe it's not on this document, but it's like 7,000 or 700 some gallons.
7 gallons.
7 gallons, that's what it is. So here's a representative bill that was occurred last year. And it has the current rates, and you can sort of see what they are. Our flat rate is for 500 cubic feet, and then it's $100 for every 100 cubic feet after that, it's a fee, and that is it 568? Yes, and so that gives you what that bill was. It totaled $94.32 for 800 cubic feet of water. So that's the current. Let's look at the proposed increase, and you will see it circled there on your document. And it's, so water right now within village is 0.056 800, and it would be increased by 1/100 of a cent to 0.066800. And the flat rate would increase $5, and over, I think you have it in the packet if you want, okay. Okay, and so every for every 100 cubic feet over 500, it would be 568, it's going to go to 578. And the same for sewer, you can see the current rate and the proposed increases on the right. So let's take an example. For a proposed increase using example above, which was 800 cubic feet, which represents 5,984 and 42 gallons in that particular quarter. You can see the math worked out there. Their increase to the water bill would be about, what is it, $5.30. And the increase to the sewer bill would be about $5.70. It represents 11.92% increase. I think the key here, though, is I was throwing a lot of numbers at you last time, looking at neighboring municipalities. So for 5,984 and 42 gallons in the village of Cooperstown, you would pay $50.74. In the village of Hartwick, you would pay $169.35. In the village of Cherry Valley, you would pay $84. In the village of Milford, you would pay $140. So I think you can see we are incredibly low on our rates. So even an 11.92% increase is really not even coming close to what our neighboring municipalities have. So if no one has any questions,
Just to point out, the last bullet there shows that the Water and Sewer Board recommended, after considering all this, recommended.
yes, and if you recall at January 4th, I was asked, I had said when the proposed wastewater treatment plant upgrade was on the engineering report in like 2017 had said there had to be an increase, and we've never done that. And I looked up what it was, and it was 14%. So they actually said, shouldn't you go up higher than 11.92? And I said, we haven't done it in a while. And I've talked to the engineers about it, and they said, this is almost a mistake. I mean, the municipality needs to be looking at these rates about every 3 years and increasing them, because going 16 years without an increase and ending up with such a discrepancy, we're less than 1/3 of Hartwick, for our water purchase, for that amount. This is, it really needs to be done. So, I will move the proposed, rates be increased as indicated on the proposed increased sheet for both, the 0.0668 rate, the flat fee to 33.40, the per cubic 100 cubic feet rate to 578. Sewer would move up again 1/100 of a cent, 0.0711, a flat fee of 35.55, and a for each 100 cubic feet, 621. And I will note that out of village rates have always historically been double in village because they are not responsible for any of the indebtedness of our plants, either our water or sewer plants. So those rates would automatically be double. Whatever this is, they're double. So that is the motion. Is there a second? By Joe. Any discussion? All in favor?
I think it's probably important to note that the water budget and the sewer budget are distinct from the general budget.
100%.
And I know we have Casper here in terms of reporting that sewer money goes to sewer, water money goes to water, and it's not, but this is being used. to
No,
pay
these
other
funds will, and it will generate, looking at what, our usage was in the village and out of village. It should generate about $95,000 more per year for water and sewer, actually a little more for water. And, as we all know, we're going to have to be thinking some point of upgrades to our water plant. And we need to be building up that reserve, so this is a good initial way to do it.
Just one comment that I just thought of. I 100% agree with the increase, but I think it's really hard to compare ourselves to these other communities when we have this beautiful resource of Otsego Lake. Just
When we have to what?
Otsego Lake.
Yeah, it isn't that, if you recall at January 4th, any upgrades.
No, I understand what you're saying, but also just. Yes, I know.
Yeah, it's not that their water costs more, but they charge like in Hartwick, whether you have water service to your property or not, you get charged a surcharge, and it was like, I don't know, $100. It was pretty expensive to support the water system. So, yes. Motion to accept the water and sewer board report. And second and moved, all in favor? You have the watershed supervisory committee minutes in there. I will commend the supervisory committee because they have really been aggressively trying to address the HAB issue that we had, and does that involve a 9E plan? And they have actively involved the SUNY biological field station, particularly Kyoto, who has attended many of those Zoom meetings. And unfortunately, a lot of the data that over the years the field station had accumulated, they were not a recognized lab, an environmental certified lab. So that data is known, but it isn't like the definitive. So working with DEC, we feel that we're going to be able to hopefully arrive at a plan, whether it's a 9E that looks at 9 different elements, or if it's a particular one that only looks at HABs, harmful blooms, then we will certainly, but they are doing just great work on that.
Are we responsible for this report, or is somebody else responsible for this report? Is it the village report? Or
We're one of the, yeah, there's
this Marcia is taking minutes for, correct?
correct. But the village has always supported the bulk of the septic system inspections, and for a while we had an engineer on it. We've always funded more, but ideally it should be all the townships around the lake.
That's not really what I was getting to.
Okay.
The correction should be it's Dr. Yokota, not Mrs. Yokota.
Okay. Did you catch that, Jenna?
No, I did not, sorry.
It's Dr. Yokota. Or Professor Yokota, your choice.
I'll let Marcia know.
All right, moving on, new
And
business.
just one thing, we
Oh.
skipped over Alva Road, might have swapped them, it's underneath the water and sewer board.
But was that overlooked?
Yes.
Okay,
So if we
yeah,
go back to that.
and that was recommended by the water and sewer too, Bill, I think.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
It's toward the end, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was, right, not the Avon Road project, the Avon Road,
The-
sewer bill.
Yeah.
So the recommendation was made to make their sewage bill, this house is not on our water delivery system, so there's no way to meter what goes into them. They're on a well, and then they discharge into our sewer system. And based on what the staff calculated, the recommendation is that the bill for that property be $100.95 per quarter.
all right, motion made to reduce it back to the average. Second by Cindy, all in favor?
Do we know, because I'm learning more about Evergreen all the time,
April.
April, do the McGowans, who own the next property up, have a similar agreement regarding the disposal of their sewage?
You
They're
know,
combined.
they're combined, as you know, in that there's
Yeah, I know.
so I don't, I think that's for that single point
Yeah,
of discharge. Do we have two?
Well, so what we calculated though just now and voted on is based on a 4-bedroom house. But there is a whole nother property once under common ownership, no longer under common ownership. And I just don't know how the sewage from that other property, which I believe has a residential component to it, is addressed.
Right, so good question, and I don't know that we don't have a bill now for that address. Do we have an account for that address?
at this point, I don't believe it was separate. So we'll, can we look into that? We'll have to look into that.
Good question.
Moving on to new business. New brew, Paul Brew.
So I feel like a broken record. There is yet another federal grant with an application deadline in February. This one, the earliest of all of those we have talked about. It is funding that is really pass-through funding for the village to apply for up to $750,000 with the intent to distribute that to individuals within our boundaries who are undertaking certain types of projects. In talking with the chair of the case card, we thought it might be interesting if that certain type of project were to be moving away from fossil fuel use in terms of heating or other or water heating, that type of thing. Again, I don't know, we can pull this together in the very short time frame that is allowed for it. I also know that Oxygen 2000 has been thinking about submitting their own application, and I would suggest that if they do so, then we do not.
100%.
But I would like to make a motion once again authorizing the village to apply for the Fall Ruin Historic Preservation Grant.
Unless a nonprofit in the village is also submitting an application. Correct. Okay, so there's the motion, second by Hannah, all in favor? We have to approve the resolution appointment of election inspectors for our March 21st village election. And you can see their names listed there. Democrat Anders Berger, Republican Tom Lyon, with alternates of Bill Kramer, Democrat, and Republican Mary Ann Wade. Is there a motion? By Cindy, all, and seconded by Sydney, all in favor? And, oh, yes, our all-time favorite thing. We have grievance night is February 21st.
Before we.
Oh,
before
yeah.
that,
Oh, budget work sessions, yeah, we got all these to do.
Well, user agreement.
Yeah, we don't- For election.
Oh, I'm sorry, and the user agreement with the Board of
I
Elections.
just want to note that it increased by a total of $525.
I'm sorry, say
It
that,
increased by $525 for this year.
and it's 750 total, or?
I'm not sure the total, I just remember that's the total increase. I'm not sure. what
Oh,
the-
okay, it was 750 on that last page.
Yeah, so that's probably what it is, so we traditionally pay less.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the user agreement with the county of Otsego for the use of voting machine? By Cindy, second by Sydney, all in favor? Thank you. All right, now we need to set up budget workshop sessions. Last year, we did like 2 in February and scheduled 2 in March, but we completed really our tentative budget by the 3rd budget meeting and did not need to go much into March. So, looking at February, is there sometime we could do Wednesday the 1st? We could do, I think most people tend to like maybe like a 5 o'clock meeting, winding up around 6:30 so you can get home. If that works for people, I would sort of propose that type of time frame. And
I can do Wednesday the 1st.
you could do Wednesday the 1st at 5, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, let's put Wednesday the 1st. At 5 on, that is our first one. Potentially. The second one could be the 15th.
I won't be available the 15th.
15th, how many would be available on
Give me a second.
Wednesday the 15th?
Strongly prefer not to do that, just because my business.
Because what?
Business.
Oh, business, at 5 is hard.
Well, no, just because that.
Oh. You'll be recuperating.
Would it be too much of a, too quick of a turnaround to do the next week, the 8th?
You know, the treasurer has to kind of put all the changes we put together in. I would prefer, we're gonna have the Board of Assessment review on February 21st. And then we've essentially gone through the month, so I'd like it sometime.
So do it like Thursday, the
Yeah, so we
16th.
just pick a different day.
Yeah, totally, does Thursday,
16th.
talk about your business, that's my birthday.
15th to the 18th.
Your birthday is 2 days after Valentine's Day.
Yeah, my poor husband.
You poor baby.
Can I
He gets
ask I'm quite sympathetic to that, but I just wanted to ask a question about our grievance night. We spend an awful lot of time together.
By law, we have to.
And we can, but can we also conduct our budget review?
I don't think.
No, you're supposed to be.
It's a set thing, it has to be 4 hours just strictly for that, I don't think you can find.
Right, we wouldn't be moving a muscle.
Yeah, we usually don't even try and do any other
No.
business, because that's what it's for. If someone suddenly walks in that door with 3 forms. We have to, that's the focus, and I understand. Yeah,
Want to give it a-
so,
It's a statutory requirement, as
Yeah.
for the amount, and yeah, I don't know if you really want to play with that. I don't know what they do, I guess if somebody didn't get what they wanted, they might sue over it, probably dealing with a few $100, so not a big thing.
No, I'm just saying we would give anybody priority that came in, but we typically have.
Okay,
all right, so, let's see,
Wednesday the 1st, Thursday the 16th. We agreed on that so far?
No, I don't think we have. What about the 13th? I mean, I realize that's a Monday, but.
that's her.
No, that's work.
Sorry, yeah, sorry, no, pretty much like the.
Yeah, we're not gonna get everybody anyway. So how many would, in your way, when?
I'm away the 15th to the 18th.
So maybe we should look earlier in the week at like,
Doesn't have, but then Hannah can't do it.
right, but we're not gonna get every.
Okay.
She's away later in the week, we're not gonna get everybody, we didn't before.
Okay, fine.
So let's look at Monday, the 13th. How is that for people at 5 o'clock? Recognizing.
Would
Yeah.
Friday the 11th be any help?
That's awfully close.
Monday evenings are actually. not
Friday,
good
the
for me.
10th, you mean? Friday
Yeah.
night?
Well,
Friday night actually would work fine for me. Friday the 10th.
I don't know, I-
Okay. It is only like, what, how many days? So it's a little tight for our treasurer.
whatever's right, I'll work with anything.
Yeah, let's head to the 13th, all right? February 13th.
Can you do the 13th?
Me?
To the point, though,
I
that's
don't think
one
so.
day, because at the end of business on Friday, whatever is done by the treasurer has been done, so you're only. I was thinking of your situation, we're only buying one day if we do it Monday night instead of Friday. Because Deb won't be working on this stuff on the weekend, will she, or will she? I don't know.
No, but you'd have essentially, she probably would have everything prepared by Friday morning. And instead, she probably would have should have an extra day. You want to go more towards, how about Friday the 17th? What's that?
I can't promise you because I don't know what the
Crumbling.
calendar is in town.
As again, we're not gonna get everybody.
I'll try to
Are
be
people
flexible.
adverse to putting it in the same? Well, no.
I mean, it's just if you work for everybody else, they can suck it up and be here. But I would.
But you weren't gonna be here.
I will not be here. Do we want to get in from Mac when he can?
2, 3, 4. We would have, if Matt could come, we would have 5. That's more than enough to be working.
I'm good 14, 15, and 16. I don't know if I'm good on the 17th, and the 13th presents some problem for me.
I'm with Richard.
What?
I'll go with you, just to try to get some
So 15.
things together.
Yeah, let's just go with the 15th. 15th at 5, thank you. And then, while we're still in February and looking at it, our Board of Assessment Review Regis night is set by law, and it's February 21st. Needs to be 4 consecutive hours. Historically, we've done 4 to 8. And we must have a quorum. We must have at least 4 people who will come and be here for that time period.
February 21st.
I can be here at 7 o'clock. I have a class I have to zoom into. I'm not teaching it, but I have to be on it. I don't know if we can.
Are there-
tell which person.
Are there 4 people?
I
Hannah could,
I-
Hannah could do it.
I can do it.
Sydney could do it. Richard could do it.
And I'm a maybe, so if you've got 4, sure, that's great.
You can do it.
I may be able to, do it, I just don't know. But if you have 4 otherwise,
You know,
Yeah.
hang out with us.
no, I've done it many times, it's the best.
It's a joke. Last year we sat here for hours and no one agreed, so.
I
Are we
did.
allowed?
I did, I agree.
I'm sorry.
Are we allowed to agree with it?
Yeah, you would just go to the other side of the table and do your presentation, and obviously when we meet after that meeting to consider assessments, you would participate in yours, but yeah.
But then there have to be 4 other people.
Who's picking up?
Yeah.
I'm not planning on agreeing with anything. That was just a.
All right, well, I will put Ellen and Joe question mark, and we'll fight it out, we'll duke it out.
I can be here till 7. I mean, my guess is that might be the big traffic time. I'm happy to sit over there with my husband.
That's true.
You have a class that goes till 7.
No, it starts at 7.
Oh, it starts
Seven
at
till
7.
9.
All right.
We'll work it out.
Mhm. Well, here's another question. At one time, and it was deadly, we sat here from like 5 to 9. We finally moved it back an hour. I don't think the time period is that set. We could essentially, if we wanted to, if that worked better for anybody, 3 to 7. If what doesn't work for people, you know, who are running a business till 5, does any of that work better? No. Okay.
Hope to be in bed by then.
All right, 4 to 8 it is, and we think we have that. So let's move on to March. I will tell you that we had reached out about a possible joint information meeting at the school with the town of Otsego to just, present information on the southern boundary. That looks like it will be either, I have to go back and look. Remember the dates? we
Now I think
proposed?
that people said the first. February 1st, wasn't that one of the dates?
We, some people said that, but we will not be ready. There's more
Okay.
things that need to be clarified for the presentation. So let me just see, I just heard from, let's see.
Oh, my God. No, I'm gone the next week.
Let me see, just. All right, here we go. We had proposed the 15th or the 22nd
March?
of March. Yes, that went out in an,
No, I'm just saying, it's so far from the previous one.
no, this isn't budget. I am saying
Oh.
what the
Oh,
southern boundary extension, so we just didn't want to wrap too close to those. So that was the 15th, okay, so does the first work? Wednesday, the 1st
Of March.
of March,
let's see what the movie is.
March 1st, we think we might have 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have 4, okay, and now, as I say, we never needed it in the past, we've usually managed to plot through in 3 meetings. Let's look at one more budget meeting date. And we sort of have to steer clear of I think the week of those potential information meetings. So maybe
There's not another week.
9th. Go 1 week later, because at this point, there's a lot fewer changes, we're tweaking. March 9th,
That works. Sure.
all right, there's your dates for our budget workshops, February 1st, February 15th, March 1st, March 9th, 5 to 6:30. We have, we believe, 4 for February 21st, and again, keep those dates of, it'll be either the 15th or 22nd of March. That's the ones that worked for the township as well, the town.
So Ellen, you said March 1 is a south boundary meeting?
March, it will be potentially March 15th or 22nd.
So
Oh,
March
March
1st is the budget one.
Is a budget.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Are we choosing which date works best for us?
So,
We're gonna, right now, we get the school either date. Our problem is, does one of those dates work better for?
I just want to say that the
Yeah.
election is March 21st, so I would really not want it on March.
Wait a second.
I can
This
also,
isn't something you would per
I
se
would have to come.
have to take minutes at.
Okay.
It's an informational meeting, really,
I can also,
or Marcia could cover it, yeah.
well, look, I just want to go back to Jen and I both had the same confusion. I had heard March 1st was not a budget meeting, but a south boundary meeting. That's not correct.
No, okay, so our budget meetings, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jenna, are February 1st, February 15th, March 1st, March 9th. And they are 5 to 6:30. We also discussed the Board of Assessment review for 4 hours on February 21st. And 4 people have.
Usually 5 or 5:30.
5 to 6:30
Okay.
for the budget
That's
meetings.
why I did. I
No,
did
no.
it right.
And 4 to 8 for the Board of Assessment review. I was then saying, we are tentatively still looking, and we haven't gotten firm answers from the town about Seago on which one, the 15th or the 22nd.
I can tell you for me and for Ben, the 15th works better.
All right. All right, so it may be the March 15th, that will be the one to sort of put a to be determined on there.
We don't have times for that then.
No, not yet. All right, those are all those meetings. And Cindy, this was you, issue a request for proposal RFP for broker services for selecting an electric supply company.
Remember, we talked about the fact that we extended for a briefer period of time our electric supply, knowing that the solar project is in the works. It's now that time where we need to think about selecting another electric supplier, and we can talk about using a broker to do that and issuing an RFP for broker services. So that's what that is.
Motion made by Cindy, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
The only thing I don't think we commented on, in our addendum, Martin, there, we were given yeah. Is it just any action need to be taken by us, or it's just notification?
I think it's notification because town doesn't have any, one of our pollutions in town of Litchfield. They don't. We control what's in the village.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure what the function of it is. I just saw it tonight, but I think it's
Requires a notification within so many feet of a boundary.
Yeah.
so we're on notice, town of Middlefield has a solar energy law.
We just saw this tonight. So everybody can read it and say, oh, it's good.
You're gonna send out those date times, right?
I can do that.
Thank you.
And we are not adjourned. There will be a brief executive session to discuss potential litigation.
After my executive.
What was the moment?
Richard has gone into executive session.
With the balance. Thank you for coming.
I was still trying to figure out what Cindy's comment was about, but Mike taking notes. Thank you for 2 minutes. You're sitting
Minutes, yeah, well, the back breaks going on. You can ask in front of me.
Oh, yeah.
Or-
I just want to make, there's a couple things that you said out on the conference. The $1 million sales tax, was just for the weekend or was that for the whole summer?
I missed
The
it.
$1 million sales tax. You said Cooperstown collector $1 million in sales
No,
tax.
I never said that. You mean at the state of the state? What I
Yes,
said was for $1 million spent on our main street. And that can happen on induction weekend and other weekends. The village receives in the sales tax $363.36. Our total sales tax figure in a good non-pandemic year is like 300 some thousand.
He does acknowledge once he.
So we.
So the $1 million figure referred to the cost of goods sold, not sales tax. I misunderstood that. The $1 million figure.
I was trying to show.
Is that $1 million of sales or that $1 million collected in sales tax?
Tourists come down our main street and spend $1 million
Oh, okay.
in
In
stores.
sales.
And they pay 8% sales tax.
On that, okay.
That goes to the county and is distributed to town.
Oh, then you get $346 and.
And the village gets the most minuscule sum, and we get $363.36. The city of Oneonta had $7,000 on sales on our main street. For instance.
That's, I understood the concept, I want to make sure I get the numbers. I misunderstood the numbers, I thought you were talking about, I thought when you said $1 million, I thought you were talking about sales tax issue, you're talking about
$1 million of
retail sales, okay, right. And that was one, and the other thing I had, the budget was 6.3 million last year.
All told with water, sewer, library, trolley, which is an enterprise, and our general fund. Our general fund is was 4.1 last year.
And you had a 20 million reserve.
The other village?
20 million reserve?
No,
What did you say you had, you did say you had a reserve.
we have reserve funds. The sewer has about a little over 2 million in reserve funds. Water has about, not very much, like 500,000. It's all in our budget, which is online. You can
I'll look at that, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at one point you were throwing numbers around and I was.
And what, I will send you, I have an article on the sales tax. that I can send you, just so you can read it.
And the last figure I wanted to make sure I got, you say 560,000 as far as the assessment, the real estate taxes?
$5.20 per $1,000 as assessed value.
Okay, 520, not 560, okay.
Yes, $520 on 100,000.
Okay, that's one,
Yep.
I'm very glad I asked it because I would have gotten the thing wrong on the sales.
All right, all right,
Good, thank you.
all right, sorry, we're gonna do a quick executive session. There's there.
Do you want to just do a motion?
The motion was made by me, second by Sydney, all in favor?
Aye.